So let's clear up some points here that people always think that wrongly about forgiveness. Forgiveness is not about being passive. It's not about being a doormat, lying down on the floor and letting people walk all over you. It's not about not even taking action. So it's there for our sake. So we need to think about this a moment that, you know, when you forgive, why are you forgiving? Who are you forgiving? So forgiveness is for you. So it doesn't mean that you even have to go and tell that person, I forgive you. It's so you can move on with your life. You see, people hurt us. And, you know, we have this ego that is so fragile and so easily dented that we get hurt by people. Even, you know, inadvertently, they may one day ignore us because their mind is elsewhere and they walk straight past us. And then we start to think they hate us and what have I done? So, you know, we carry all of this around with us. It's like we have two really big, heavy suitcases full of all the people and all the things that have wronged us in our life. And wherever we go, we're carrying these two big suitcases everywhere with us. Forgiveness is putting those suitcases down, leaving them there and moving on with our life. That is what forgiveness is. It is for you to be able to move on with your life. It isn't for the other person to help them to feel better about themselves. It isn't about that. And it's not even about you, you know, giving in and saying, yes, you were right, I was wrong, or, oh, I deserve for you to treat me like that. It is nothing to do with that. People think that forgiveness is a real weakness. Forgiveness is a huge strength. Strong people forgive. Weak people carry these suitcases around with them. Of course, there are many, many times when we are really, really hurt. I mean, there are, and it brings up strong emotions in us, and it could also bring up anger and bitterness. But you see, that bitterness, that resentment, that wanting to get revenge is just going to eat at you. Now, this person did something wrong, and maybe they didn't even know they did wrong, but even if they did, you know, they've let it go and they're moving on with their lives. But you are carrying it around in these two heavy suitcases with you. So you are causing yourself all of this suffering. Why would you do that? I mean, why would we have somebody who's hurt us and made us feel bad? Why do we then hurt ourselves even more by holding on to it, by being resentful, by holding, you know, holding that grudge, wanting to get payback? You know, in Buddhism, I don't know if I mentioned this, we talk about two arrows. So they've shot the first arrow. Nothing we can do about that. But now, because we're holding these grudges and we're being resentful, we're shooting arrows at ourselves. So the first arrow we could do nothing about, but the subsequent arrows are what we are shooting at ourselves. So forgiveness is about you. So it's about you letting go of what is happening. I'm not saying forget. I'm not saying go and run up and give a big hug to this person. What I'm saying is that forgiveness is a huge part of resilience, is a huge part of awareness. Being aware that we are causing ourselves all of this hatred and anger and regret and that. Being aware of that fact and being able to let that go and move on with our lives is showing that you are a strong person, is showing that you are a person that is in control of your life. You have that resilience. A person who has no resilience will just keep holding on to that, whatever has harmed them. It is hard. I'm not saying to you, I'm not sitting here now and saying to you that it's easy. It isn't. You know, it can be quite difficult because our mind has been clouded by all that suffering and all the pain and the heartache. But by being angry, wanting revenge, and, you know, having hatred and piling up all of that pain on top of us, that's not going to help us. That, in fact, is going to stop us healing. It's going to prevent us from moving on. So Gandhi called it an eye for an eye. Yeah? He said an eye for an eye only ends up making the whole world blind. If you want revenge, then, and we all want revenge for somebody else, we want an eye for an eye, we're all going to end up blind. What's the benefit in that? And Buddha said that hatred doesn't cease by hatred. Hatred will only cease by love. And he said that that is like an eternal rule in life, that we'll never get rid of hatred with hatred. Look at war, when one side hates the other side. In the end, we have to come together. We have to reconcile. We have to have love. That's the only way we can move forward. So through hatred, through wanting revenge, through an eye for an eye, then you're never going to be able to move on with your life. You know, I see on many occasions, I've just watched a program on Netflix about people on death row. So these people are going to be killed, and say that they've killed somebody, and so the family comes along to watch this person also be killed, because they think that now we've got our own back and now he's dead. Now we can live our life. You can't. When they go in to watch that person being killed, when they come out, they're exactly the same person. Until they forgive, then they're never going to be able to move on with their life. Revenge is not the answer. Revenge will not make you feel better, because once you've had your revenge and you haven't forgiven, you're still carrying it around with you. You're still going to remember, oh, they did these horrible things to me. So you need to sit and think carefully about what forgiveness really is. Because if you think it's about being weak and giving in and not taking action and just laying down, letting people walk all over you, then you're misunderstanding forgiveness. Forgiveness is a really, really strong, powerful tool that we all have so we can move on with our lives. You cannot move on until you forgive, as you're just going to carry that around with you, and it will cloud all of your judgment. It's like people who have been abused and they're as children, and they wasn't given the facilities to deal with that. They take it into their adult life. They take it to their deathbed because they're not dealing with it. If we don't deal with something, it's going to stay there. Of course it is. I mean, that makes sense. You know, if you have a crack in your wall and you don't deal with it, it's just going to get worse over the years. We have to deal with it. So you can see that this hatred and this, you know, wanting revenge and that, it's like a crack in your mind. If you don't fill it up, if you don't deal with it, it is just going to get worse. So forgiveness is for you. It's for you to be able to move on. Now, I know that when we were talking about compassion, it's difficult to think about having compassion for people. We tend to look at behavior. And this is also a difficult practice when we break it down and when we understand forgiveness. It is difficult. It's hard because, you know, we've been hurt, and we naturally, you know, in our mind, we want to get back at them. You see, for me, we had 9/11 when they flew into the towers. Now, George W. Bush had an opportunity there to do something different. He had an opportunity to change the way people were thinking. It was an awful thing. I mean, it was just the most horrible and tragic thing to see. I mean, I hope we'll never see anything like it in our lives again. But instead of sitting back and thinking, what led us to this point? What got us to this thing where people hate us so much that they would fly an aeroplane into this building and kill 3,000 people? Instead of stepping back and just thinking of something different, doing a different way, he took the same route, hatred. And look at the mess we got ourselves in, and the mess we're still in. And a lot of that is just the knock-on effect from not stepping back a moment and just saying, whoa. It's not saying that what these people did was right. Of course it isn't, and it wasn't, and it will never be right. But we have to some point take a step back and just think, there is a better way to be here. There is a better way to act here. That is what forgiveness is about. It's you being the bigger person. It's you stepping back and thinking, okay, there has to be a better way for me, so I don't carry this through the rest of my life. Because you become bitter and twisted, and then you start taking it out on other people. So forgiveness is not a weakness. Forgiveness is a huge strength. Now, another thing about forgiveness is it's inclusive, which means it includes you. You also have to forgive yourself for making those mistakes. So again, this is part of resilience that we were talking about. When we can forgive ourselves, when we can understand that we are not perfect, we will never be perfect, and we are going to make mistakes. When we can understand that, it means that we can forgive ourselves. We can learn lessons that this was not a good thing for me to do. We can apologize to people if we need to apologize. I mean, and apologize and really mean that apology. And then we can move on with our lives, but we need to forgive ourselves. So forgiveness is totally inclusive. It means forgiving us for our mistakes, for our shortcomings, for hurting other people. And it means forgiving somebody else so we can move on with our life. So like I said, when you're forgiving somebody, you don't have to go and tell them. It's for you to be able to move on with your life. If you enjoyed this video, then press the subscribe button now. And don't forget to share the video with your friends.